Hey class, I'm sorry about that shut off earlier, but let me continue where we were talking. We're talking about this particular chart here and where you would actually want to maximize on this particular chart. And in a perfectly competitive area, you'd want to maximize where marginal revenue, which equals the marginal cost because it's perfect competition, is equal to your short-run marginal cost, and that's at 600 units here. You would not want to maximize at this point, which is actually what's called profit margin maximization. By focusing on marginal cost equals marginal revenue at 600, we produce 200 units more. And the profit's also going to change from 8,000 to 10,200. But you will see, if you go back here, the profit margin was 20 here. Now the profit margin is 17. So the profit margin shrank, but the total profit rose. So we want to produce where the total profit is the highest. And that's why we reproduce at 600 units. You could look at this a little differently as well. Same type of logic here, just different types of curves. Here we're looking at total revenue and total cost on this axis here. And the break-even point is accomplished at 950. But where these two are the most separated, the total cost and the total revenue, is right where profit is maximized, and that's 600 units. And below, here I'll try to position this so you can see it a little bit better, but you can see these on the slides as well. Profit is maximized the most at this point here, where this is profit on this axis and this is quantity here at 600 units. Point A is the point at which profit is maximized to the maximum. A quick question is, would a firm produce at $10.50? In the previous charts, it was $36. And the answer is yes, but they would take a hit because $10.50 is less than the average total cost. So at that point, would they still produce? The answer is yes. They would still produce, but they'd take that hit because the $10.50 is less than that average total cost. Average total cost is here. This is less than that. If we did the math, we'd find the firm would still lose $1,950, but they would still produce. Why would they still produce? Because the fixed costs are $2,400 in this scenario. So they're losing the $1,950, but the fixed costs are $2,400. So they'd produce the 300 units at a loss of $1,950 rather than 0 units at a loss of $2,400. So in a sense, they're losing less money. Okay, so let's go through some of the summaries of these short-run output decisions. Average variable cost tells us where to produce. It gives us the shutdown if the price falls below that average variable cost. Short-run marginal cost tells us how much to produce. If the price is greater than the minimum average variable cost, total production or output should take place at where price equals the short-run marginal cost. This is, remember, marginal revenue. So price equals marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So it's been the same since Chapter 3. Average total cost tells us how much profit or loss, tells us just how much profit or loss if we do decide to produce. And that can be found through profit equaling price less your average total cost multiplied by your quantity. So how do we get to our supply curves? For an individual price-taking firm, a portion of the firm's marginal cost curve above the average variable cost is going to be, what you're going to see is it's going to be that supply curve. And for prices below that average variable cost, quantity supplied is 0. So for a competitive industry, the horizontal sum of the supply curves of all individual firms always will be upward sloping, and supply prices give the marginal cost of production for every firm. So there's a reason why we're talking so much about marginal cost when we're talking about supply. Because in a sense, the supply curve, at least the short run supply curve, is going to be made up in a sense of the marginal cost curve. How about short run producer surplus? The short run producer surplus is the amount by which total revenue exceeds total variable cost. And this is the area above the short run supply curve that is below the market price over the range of the output supplied, and it's going to exceed economic profit by the amount of total fixed cost. This is easier shown, I believe, in some ways on these slides here. Here, this is basically saying this is your short run marginal cost curve, but this is also your supply curve. And they're talking about what's the producer surplus. Well, if the demand curve was here, that would be your producer surplus. In other words, there are some producers who are willing to produce down here and take this price, but because of equilibrium, they get it up to here, which, in other words, they benefit. So how about the long run? Well, all firms are in a profit maximizing equilibrium. You have price equal to long run marginal cost. And this is going to occur because of entry and exit of firms in and out of the industry. And the market's going to continually adjust until the price equals the long run marginal cost, which is going to equal the long run average cost. So the long run industry supply curve, is going to be flat or perfectly elastic or upward sloping. And it's going to depend on whether it's a constant cost industry or if it's an increasing cost industry. And economic profit is going to be zero for all points on the long run industry supply curve. So economic profit, you should remember here, is going to attract new firms into the industry, which will increase supply. And then the increase in supply will subsequently lower the price. And as price lowers, firms will adjust their quantities, and this will continue until price or profit is eliminated. So once again, economic profit attracts new firms into the industry, increasing supply, which will subsequently decrease the price. And as the prices decrease, firms are going to adjust their quantity supplied, and once again, that'll continue until profit's eliminated. So the long run profit will be zero. The long run industry supply curve, or long run industry supply, you could have a constant cost industry, and here, as the industry output expands, input prices remain constant, and the minimum average cost, long run average cost, is unchanged. The price is going to be equal to the minimum long run average cost, so the curve is horizontally or perfectly elastic. An increasing cost industry is a situation in which the industry output expands, input prices rise, and the minimum long run average cost curve is going to rise. So here, long run supply prices rise and the curve is upward sloping. Here's examples. Here you have a typical firm in long run equilibrium. Here you have an industry in long run equilibrium. So you can see there's a distinction between each, but this is a constant cost industry. Here's your typical firm, here's the industry, and you can see that it's a constant cost industry because it's a flat curve. Whereas increasing cost industry, here's your firm A, maybe your firm B, and your firm C. And over here, you can see that they all have as far as an industry goes, it's going to be a long run industry supply curve sloping upward. Okay, so we're going to close out with a couple thoughts on a theory first on economic rent. The book example here provides one of a builder with great talent, and his talent decreases construction costs by about $75,000. And if we assume he makes about $100,000, his firm makes $75,000 profit, and all others earn zero profit. If he knows this, and his firm also knows this, and all the other people do, he was going to demand a raise. And he could get up to $75,000, according to this logic, for a raise. And if a firm does decide to provide that, it will result in zero profit in the long run. So, economic rent is payment to the owner of a scarce superior resource in excess of the resource's opportunity cost. In long-run competitive equilibrium firms that employ such resources, they're going to earn zero economic profit. The potential economic profit is paid to the resource as economic rent. In increasing cost industries, all long-run producer surplus is paid to the resource suppliers as economic rent. Okay, so we've talked a lot about theory in the class. I just want to get to the gist of the material here at the end for perfectly competitive firms. So there's a lot of theory even mentioned within the perfectly competitive firm, but it does all come down to basically these final 3 or 4 slides here. Okay, so if we want to implement the profit maximizing output decision, first thing we're going to want to do is forecast our product price. And you can use statistical techniques from Chapter 7 to do that. Second step, estimate your average variable cost and short-run marginal cost curves. And that could be done from using statistical techniques that we developed in Chapter 7 and some of the information that we learned in Chapter 8 and 9. Then we would want to check our shutdown rule. If the price is greater than the average variable cost minimum, then you should produce. If it's less than the average variable cost minimum, then you should shut down. If the price is greater than the average variable cost minimum, you want to find the output where the price is equal to the short-run marginal cost, and therefore you're going to set your forecasted price equal to the estimated marginal cost and then solve for Q star, which would be your output. And from that, you can then compute your profit or loss, your total revenue less your total cost. So the point being made here is that a lot of what we talked about has been theoretical, but it can actually come, now that we've learned statistical tools in Chapter 7 and Chapter 4, to be able to actually implement some of the stuff that we've discussed. We can actually utilize this theory and empirically solve for it, create methodologies, use statistics, run regressions, and compute findings. So we're going to end this chapter there. We're going to go through a little bit of Chapter 12, and we'll cover the rest in our final class.